Hello, welcome, Cabbage here. In War of the Visions, let's talk about unit archetypes in Arena team building. This is one of the videos that I've been wanting to make for a while, the last month at least, when I've been really focusing on Arena. And also on the side, seeing all the talk in Global about people focusing way too much on elements. At first, made me wanted to make a rant video about elements, but instead we'll do something positive, and I'll talk about how I approach team building for Arena. But I made this super crappy drawing. I guess first I can explain how this drawing works. The outside, the green, that is the field, and then that purple dotted line is the midway point between your starting area and then the opponent's starting area. And if we look on the left, we got a back line and front line, and then I'm placing units sort of like where they would ideally operate within the field. And so yeah, units that would work best in front line, they will be the ones to go out first, the ones to engage the enemy first, and hopefully most as well. While backline units want to stay back and then do what they do safely. And then in the middle, I guess we'll call midline, these are characters that kind of operate in the middle, of course. And then you don't have to interpret this literally. With Arena, you know, we're talking about hate. And so, like, even if everybody's, like, you know, side by side, maybe the tanks with hate are drawing more attacks. So effectively, they are fulfilling the role of the frontline character, even if their position is all the same. And again, I want to stress that this is for Arena. These same kind of roles, and then also where they operate in the field, might not be true for like guild battles or class matches. I'll defer to RNJ on guild battles, I'll defer to Mysidia on class matches, and I would actually be really interested to hear what they would have to say about you know, unit role archetypes, maybe team archetypes. Because in guild battle, you know, you got the attack team and the defense team. Maybe you need different things for that. Also, with your team being sort of hidden, maybe certain things don't matter as much or other things matter more. And then for class matches, especially if you're doing the manual play, then of course hate is not a factor, so maybe tanks are not as important, or maybe you need to use them in a certain way. But yeah, I'd be very interested to hear their takes on units and teams for those PvP modes. And for anyone else, if you have any feedback on how to improve my drawing here, or like my roles or their placement, keep it to yourself. I'm not interested in hearing it, because I'm not going to redo this map, I'm not going to redo the video. But feel free to make your own video about it. But one big reason why I would not change this map at all anyway is because you could apply this to lots of other like strategy or like battle games like Final Fantasy Tactics, Tactics Ogre. I guess I can talk about the individual units. I guess we'll start from the left. Oh, I forgot to talk about the bottom here. But all of the units that I'm placing on the left side, these are more attack-focused units. While the units on the right are more focused on defense, or you could think of it as like damage and non-damage type units. But on the attack side, we got mid-range attackers and long-range attackers. These I would really only consider top-tier attackers. So like mid-range, we're talking about like when it was just released, Stern, Orlandu, Mediana, people like that. Super Stern later. Then like Garble, and then maybe now like Helena and Cloud in JP. And then long-range attackers, usually they don't do as much damage as the mid-range attackers, but we're talking about like Federica or Jaden. And we move over to the side, we got Bruiser. I wanted to do like, you know, short-range attacker, but all of the short-range attackers so far in War of the Visions are Bruisers, so I might as well give them the name Bruiser, but they operate more towards the front. They are designed to take a few hits while doing good damage themselves. Some of them do top-tier damage, like Raldor with his Limit Break. Although I don't know how true that is anymore without EX jobs. Okay, and then continuing moving on to the right, we have Breakers. These are units that need to operate near the enemy, so that's why I kind of gave them a bigger area of effect, front line or mid line, depending on the range of their attacks. Okay, next to them we got buffers. They also want to engage other units, this time teammates, so they might have to move to the mid line in order to buff your front line units. And then all the way to the right, characters that we are using for defensive purposes. We have magic tanks and physical tanks at the front line. We have time mages in the mid line. They too, like buffers, you could almost put them in the same category as buffers, but they want to get close to teammates in order to get them up. And then in the back we have healers who want to stay back because they don't usually have good defenses. And before anybody brings up some exception to the rule here, of course there are exceptions to every rule. And then also, most units, they will fulfill multiple of these roles. Like my beloved Christmas Mashiri. She's a long-range attacker, she's also a mid-range attacker, she's also a bruiser. You could call her an evade unit if you considered reflex like good enough for an evade unit, and I do. Or you could also consider Cloud. He could also fall under a mid-range attacker, long-range attacker, breaker, and again evade for reflex. And then you got Gilgamesh, who could be like time mage, breaker, mid-range attacker. So yeah, lots of units, they will fulfill different areas. And then of course there are units that could like change the position of these roles. Maybe like Christmas Victoria, when she gets her EX jobs, maybe you could consider her a bruiser, a long-range attacker slash bruiser, so that might move a bruiser down. But yeah, we're just talking about like kind of the ideal, like esoteric ways of thinking about these roles. We're not talking about specific units here. And then esoteric is a good word here actually, because it's not written anywhere in the game that this unit is this type of role. And that might be why people are sort of latching onto elements so hard, is because it is so obvious. It's just written right there on the unit, but like breaker is not written on a unit. And then when you are building a new PvP team for Arena, or even if you're considering building a new account, top-level attackers are kind of the most important character to consider first. And then you kind of want to, get that first, level them first, and then build around them. For Arena, this can change depending on which opponent you want to go against. And that's the beauty of Arena, is the ability to choose your opponent. That's something that Guild Battle and then Class Match can't say. Oh, totally forgot to talk about evade units. Evade units, they're kind of a mix of attack and defense. And depending on the unit or how they are built, they will fulfill more kind of an attack or a defense role. Like Shadowlink's pre-EX jobs, she was more kind of a tie-up unit. She would be more to the right, more of a defensive unit, but would still be frontline. Her job would be to get in there, distract the enemy, take attacks, take away ability uses and AP. But you get a character like EX Kiton. She's still, of course, operating on the front line. She is an excellent damage source, and so she'll sit more on the left side of this picture. So yeah, that's why evade is so wide there. Alright, so I think that's all I wanted to say about how I think about units, like what categories I put them in. Next, I want to think about looking at this, this map while considering team building. And again, this is just for Arena. This maybe doesn't apply as much to guild battles or class matches. And then also, when I build teams, this goes for any video game that I play, but I like a balanced team with like defense and offense. The thing about building for Arena, and maybe why it kind of fits my playstyle, is because if you go too hard on attack or too hard on defense, then you get a very inconsistent team. It's not going to win consistently. With a very heavy attack team, you can try to kind of overpower the opponent, try to take them down before they can take you down. With a very defense-heavy team, you can try to outlast the other party. But yeah, both of those builds I feel are risky. So I try to go for balance. And then looking at this map, I think about balance like between frontline and backline, attack and defense. And so my previous point about maybe starting with a top tier attacker, that means I'm going to have either mid-range or long-range here. I'm usually going to want somebody from the front line in order to engage the enemy, so I can keep attacks away from my mid-range or long-range attacker. And so that's going to mean an evade character or a tank. My JP account, it's not very strong with evade, so that's why I'm usually using magic tanks or physical tanks. And I've said this before, but tanks are some of the most versatile units as far as team building. Or maybe not versatile is the right word, but like, it enables you to make more teams and also take on more enemies in Arena. Which is why I'm so interested in getting so many of them. Also because I'm not focusing on evade. And so if I have my top tier attacker and then I have my tank, then I can kind of choose from any other place freely, that last slot. And as an example, I can show you maybe the team that I am the most proud of any that I have made in my year and a half of this game. But this is my versus 2B and Tifa team with Aerith, Engelbert, and Helena. And if I were too focused on elements, I could never have thought of this team, because we've got 3 different elements here. Nobody's buffing each other with mastery abilities, and then vision cards. There's no element-specific vision cards either. But even though I was going against like wind heavy or mono wind teams, I was still able to beat them because the idea of like unit roles or like team archetypes, it still matters more than all the buffs that you get for a mono element party. Like if we look at my team roles-wise or like map-wise, I have my frontline unit in Engelbert, I have my midline unit in Helena, and I have my backline unit in Aerith. And so they all have their different roles, and they're all supporting each other. Engelbert is drawing attacks to himself, away from Helena, while Aerith is healing Engelbert and also pushing him to the front to better enable him so that he can last longer, do his job longer. So that makes the window wider for Helena to do damage against the other teams. And this was super effective against those 2B Tifa teams. And so this is a very satisfying team for me to use because, one, I was able to beat a meta team very consistently and get a good score in Arena. But also on a personal level, I was able to make a team that, proved some points to myself, and then also use some like old or underrated units, specifically Engelbert here. And so that satisfied the kind of the creative side of me. That's not going to be important to everybody, but if you can think like with these more kind of foundational things, with attack types, attack resistances, roles, positioning in the field, then I think you can accomplish a lot, and you can take on whatever the current meta is. And then once we have our team, we have roles covered, we've thought about the field, we've thought about which opponents we're going to go against, then we can start thinking about elements. It's like the roles and then the attack types and stuff, those are the bone and muscle of the team, while the elements are the clothes. Those are really the things that you should be thinking about last. And so like here, with this versus 2B Tifa team, I saw that I didn't have any elements lined up, so I didn't have to feel restricted in what vision cards I could use. And on the flip side, and I'm embarrassed to admit that I have personal experience with this, a mono-element team can lose against another mono-element team. It has the advantage on if the disadvantaged team is built well enough with these more foundational concepts. Just because you line up a mono-element team doesn't mean it unlocks anything that makes it invincible. It still follows all of the other rules. And I feel like people took the wrong lesson from the Yuna mono light party. It was very strong, but was it strong because it was mono? I think it was more important that it had a great selection of tanks like Warrior of Light, Engelbert. It had one of the best units in the game, to say nothing of a best healer in the game, but one of the best units in Yuna, who could kind of do everything. And then you had a selection of attackers that you could choose for that third slot in El Shirel, Sakura, Cecil, people like that. So the true lesson to take from that mono light meta was that light was a very powerful element, very balanced as well, with a lot of different roles filled, and then also good vision cards available there. But the lesson that people took was that mono element is strong, regardless of what element it is. Alright, and then here, I'll show you another team that I made that was very successful. This is Muraga as my tank, and then Helena and Garble. This is Muraga as the physical tank working at the front line, and then I have two mid-range characters in Garble and Helena. This was very effective against lightning teams and then Cloud, kind of in that like train track map. And then here, this is a blast from the past. This is from February, when I got that very high run in Arena. This is on the current library map that we're playing in Global. But here I have my frontline unit in Rain, and then I have two long-range attackers in Luasa and Christmas Mashiri. So yeah, Rain, he was able to tie up pretty much everybody, as my two long-range attackers could snipe them. Alright, and then here I can show you a bunch of teams that I went against in my last recent run in Arena. But here, this first team, this is Mono Wind, and I really like this team. Not because it's Mono Wind, but we have two frontline units in 2B and Tifa. They are very kind of self-sufficient. They can do both offense and defense, being evade units. And then we have a mid-range attacker in Howlet. And then he's pretty protected because you got the two frontline units, they're going to take a lot of attacks, they're going to evade a lot of those, and so Howlet should be able to operate pretty freely with maybe a low chance of being taken down himself, so I like this team, this is balanced. It's also a mix of a physical and magic damage, which I don't like going against. Okay, here's another Mono Wind team. I do not like this team, because these are three frontline units, and Dario's not really offering anything to help Tifa or 2B. Granted, Tifa and 2B, again, they're self-sufficient. They're probably strong enough that they can make up for the lack of anything that Dario is bringing to this team. But still, I think this team could be better. That slot that Dario's in is sort of wasted, I would say. Okay, here's a third Mono Wind team. This is with Ayaka in the back. That could also be Halloween Leela. But I like this too. This is also balanced. Two frontline, one backline. If your evade units, if they do somehow get hit, then Ayaka can bring them back up. I like how this team looks too. Okay, next we got a Mono Lightning. This team I do not like. You got two backline units and then one midline unit. Who's taking the damage first and who's taking the most damage? It's Cloud. And so you're really relying on his reflex, and you're really relying on trying to do so much damage so quickly that the other team doesn't have that much chance to attack. This team would work better in class match with manual play, I would feel like. With auto battle, I don't think so much. Okay, here's another Mono Lightning team. This one is better because you got the frontline unit in Charlotte, you got midline in Cloud, and then you got backline in Federica. So again, you got everybody kind of supporting each other, making each other work better. And a good damage output as well. Okay, here's a Mono Ice team. This one I don't like so much. You got two frontline units in Laswell and then Valentine Salia. And they're really relying on their barriers to take, one or two attacks, and then you're really relying on their damage to sort of overpower the opponent. You do have a breaker in Barrett, but I don't know if his breaks are going to be enough to really support Laswell and Valentine Salia that are going to go down semi-quickly. Here's another Mono Ice team. This one's a little bit better, because you got three frontline units. This team is going for overpowering damage. I guess if you're going to go all out for damage, it's good to get three really good damage dealers. That's going to be your best chance to overpower, I think. But again, relying on barriers, take them down before you are taken down yourself. This team is a little bit better. You got Valentine Salia and Laswell, frontline units. I have been saying the last couple teams that the attackers are frontline units. They're not technically frontline units according to my map, but if you only have mid-range attackers, they're going to end up being the frontline units, so that's why I've been calling them that. But here you got Salia and then Laswell and Cloud. Again, this is sort of another overpowering team, but this one's harder to counter because it has a mix of elements and then a mix of attack types, so I like this one a little bit better than maybe the Barrett team. Okay, and then we'll look at a few teams that I did not like going against. And then if you want to make an arena team that I don't want to go against, mix elements and mix attack types. That'll be harder to do damage against and also harder to defend against. Here we have two mid-range attackers in Cloud and Dress Up Grasida, and then we have a backline healer in Aerith. Here again we don't have a frontline unit, so Cloud and then Dress Up Grasida are going to be taking more attacks. But with that healer in the back, you can kind of extend the life of those mid-range attackers. And then since they do very good damage, then you do have a chance of overpowering the other team before they are taken down. Okay, here's another team. This one's fun. This was a Kiton, so frontline evade unit, built for Drain Force, pretty clearly. So she can act as a tie-up unit, while Dress Up Grasida, the mid-range attacker, can attack from far away, and then she'll be protected a bit. And then we have Christmas Venera as well. Looks like she's built to be a bruiser, so another frontline unit, she can protect Grasida, while also taking attacks herself and then doing some damage herself. Okay, and then last opponent team that we will look at here, this is my love triangle team. I am desperately trying to get this up and running. But this one works. You got the frontline unit in Mont, you got the mid-range unit in Dress Up Grasida, and then you have a Christos Mashidi who could be mid-range or long-range, depending on if you give her the Ranger subjob. But for balance in rolls, it's pretty good. And then you have a good damage output as well. And as a bonus, you get all of the buffs from the master abilities and then the vision cards. Someday, every element will be able to operate like this, where every element has every role that you can choose from, and so you can make a balanced team within an element. But most of the elements now in War of the Visions, because it is a young game, are not that fleshed out. And so I still feel like it's too early to be focusing on mono-element stuff. I think people, especially newer players, they should focus more on the vision cards that can buff all elements, and then also think about filling roles, getting a magic tank, getting a physical tank, getting mid and long-range attackers and healers, filling those roles, and then thinking about elements after that. Alright, so those are my thoughts on unit roles and team compositions, how to think for Arena. I did say before that if you have any feedback on my map here, that I'm not interested in hearing it. But I am interested in hearing your theories for how you put a team together, if you think about units in this sort of roles sort of way. Alright, thanks for watching and we'll see you again. Take care.